I recently read The Art of Thinking Clearly by Rolf Dobelli. How often do you plan your day and finish every item on your to-do list? Half the time? Rarely ever? Most of us suck at estimating completion times, thanks to an innate cognitive bias called the planning fallacy, which is just one of many cognitive biases that impair our judgment. When you find yourself in a bad situation and think, how could it be so stupid? You can probably blame a cognitive bias. We cannot eliminate our cognitive biases, but if we are more aware of them, we can save ourselves from making stupid mistakes with our limited time and hard-earned money. Let's start building a condensed cognitive bias checklist we can consult before making a personal, professional, or financial commitment and avoid needlessly wasting time and money. The first item on our checklist is the extrapolation error, aka clustering illusion. Flip a coin and chart the result by moving a line up one for heads and down one for tails. After 10 coin flips, you may have a chart that goes up and to the right after a string of heads. Now, it would be foolish to bet that you would continue seeing more heads than tails, since the outcome is 50-50, and a sample size of 10 doesn't mean much. But people make small sample size bets all the time. A person moves to a city with long winters after spending just 5 days in that city in the middle of summer. A person buys a $2,000 treadmill after using a treadmill at the gym just a handful of times. Or a person sells all their investments based on a 30-day trend when they have a 30-year investing time horizon. Our brains love to find meaning in short-term trends and rush to conclusions. We irrationally make big decisions based on small data sets, especially if a data set supports something we want to do. Which brings us to the next item on our checklist, confirmation bias. I used to stare at stock price charts for hours, searching for buy and sell signals. If I felt the market was going to go up, I always found a bullish price pattern that signaled a buy. And when I thought the market was ready for a correction, I always found a price pattern that confirmed my fears. Warren Buffett once remarked, "What a human being is best at doing is interpreting all new information so that their prior conclusions remain intact." If there's something you feel like doing, you will almost always find enough evidence to support doing it. If you're in the market for a new house and you have a good feeling the instant you walk into an open house, you'll suddenly expand your pros list for that house, and the cons, like a long commute to work or a noisy road behind the house, will suddenly matter less. The next item on our checklist is special case syndrome. Business leaders go forward with costly projects despite knowing similar projects have failed because they insist the next project is a special case or an exception. Investors routinely buy at peak euphoria and sell when everyone else is panicking because they insist that what's happening now is unlike anything in financial history. But as Sir John Templeton famously said, the 4 most expensive words in the English language are "this time it's different." Our next bias is not invented here syndrome. One evening, author Rolf Dobelli tried a new sauce recipe to go with the fish he was cooking. When his wife took a bite, she made a face and slowly scraped the sauce off the fish. Rolf didn't think the sauce was that bad. 2 weeks later, his wife was cooking fish and made 2 sauces, her tried and true sauce and a sauce from a famous French chef. Rolf tasted the second sauce and thought it was absolutely awful. After dinner, his wife confessed the second sauce was not from a famous chef. It was the sauce that Rolf made 2 weeks earlier. When we have an idea for a new business or a family vacation, we feel it is far more brilliant than it actually is, and we are far more likely to commit to that idea than if it came from someone else. Rolf says, we are drunk on our own ideas. To sober up, take a step back every now and then and examine their quality in hindsight. Which of your ideas from the past 10 years were truly outstanding? Exactly. Now, the 4 previous biases are considered self-deception biases. The next 4 are social proof deception biases. First up is survivorship bias. Behind every successful person is a graveyard of unsuccessful people who are silent. When you drive around town, you see hundreds of stores open for business, making money, but you don't see all the businesses that came before them that failed. If you drove through town one day and suddenly saw that half the stores were abandoned, representing the average failure rate of a business after 5 years, you might think twice before quitting your job and investing your life savings in a brick-and-mortar business. If you took up golf after watching golf on TV, you would have unrealistic expectations and probably quit after a few weeks. Golf on TV shows the best shots from the best players who are having one of their best days on the course. As a new golfer, You would probably enjoy the game more and continue playing if you saw a highlight reel of terrible shots and started learning with realistic expectations. Next up, selection factor neglect. Unless you're around 6 foot 2 inches tall, have a long torso, big feet, and an arm length to height ratio higher than most people, dedicating your life to becoming an Olympic freestyle swimmer will be a very frustrating endeavor, because you can put in more work than someone with a swimmer's body and never defeat them in a race. We want to believe that we can succeed with hard work alone, so we look past prerequisite traits, i.e. selection factors, of top performers in select fields. We can learn most things and excel in many fields, but we must be careful not to emulate someone with extreme traits. Next up, outcome bias. The only thing worse than emulating an extreme outlier is emulating someone who got extremely lucky. A famous hedge fund manager can make a string of dumb decisions and get rich, but years later, that same investor will make similar decisions and lose everything. Luck plays a bigger part in success than we'd like to admit. If we picked a random group of 100 successful entrepreneurs, only one, on average, will have success starting another business. In the book, Rolf says, you would assume that such self-starters, who are blessed with talent, a good personal network, and solid reputation, would be well equipped to found numerous other startups. But repeat success is rare because luck often plays a bigger role than skill does. And the final item on our condensed cognitive bias checklist is groupthink. Our doubts get washed away when we see a room full of people arrive at the same conclusion, but the consensus we see is likely an illusion. If the room had just one attractive and confident person in position of authority who told a great story, they could have persuaded the group to take their side. However, if the group had not been subject to that persuasive leader and anonymously wrote down their conclusions on a sheet of paper, there probably wouldn't be a consensus. Never underestimate the power of a persuasive person to get a group of people to make irrational decisions. Now, the next time you're about to commit your limited time and hard-earned money to an endeavor, quickly check off the 8 items on the cognitive bias checklist. When you are aware of your cognitive biases, you are more likely to embrace trial periods, create backup plans, and predetermine a stopping point just in case your forecast is wrong. Since you now know that cognitive biases are prone to lead to over-optimistic forecasts, it's safe to assume that what you want to do will take twice as long and the payoff will be half as rewarding as you think. If something might take twice as long and yield half the reward, but you still deem it worth doing, it is probably a worthwhile endeavor. That was the core message that I gathered from The Art of Thinking Clearly.